you to all the witnesses for being here today. I'm going to start out, Masha, I'm so sorry for the loss of your daughter, and you are wonderful for the support you're giving to your son in helping him find recovery. After 9 years of very marked change in addiction policy, where this Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has decided to flood the streets with dangerous opioids and create, Mr. Chair, thank you. Can I have my time back? The witness had his mic not on mute. Thank you. So after 9 years of marked liberal policy changes in addiction, flooding the streets with dangerous opioids, and legalizing drugs like crack and heroin in British Columbia, normalizing drug use to a whole new generation, do you believe that has played a role in making your son have a harder time finding recovery from addiction?
The safe supply, as it's administered to him the last 2.5 years, has definitely played a role, because he's the word is diverting. Let's use the real word. It's called trafficking. I've had the police over to talk to him about what he's doing. He fears law enforcement enough that not wanting to go to jail. He doesn't have a criminal record. But yes, in my view and my lived experience, the safe supply in my son's case, because there's no treatment attached to it, it's just the doctor gives him all these pills, he diverts them, gets the drugs he needs, and he's still an addict. In my view, if he didn't have these pills and was receiving methadone, or if he was receiving his hydromorph under witness dosage and there was a treatment plan attached to it, I believe it would be successful. As it stands now, to me, it's not successful. It needs to be overhauled. There has to be regulatory oversight. You're flooding the market using taxpayers' dollars with lethal opiates that are making their way into high schools, adolescents paying up to $10 a pill for a hydromorphine. So how could this be helping us?
Well, I think that actually leads into my next question. Do you think that the government calling this safe supply and using that term and making it seem like these are somehow safe is a responsible word?
It's an unsafe supply, in my view, as a mother with a lived experience, observing how recovery care dispenses their safe supply. It's not safe. It's only safe if it's witnessed, or as the doctor here was in their clinic, where it's a witnessed or injectable dosage, then I'm all for it. But you need oversight. You need to be audited. You can't dispense these kind of drugs to addicts and expect them to take them as they're prescribed. Like, come on.
Well, and it's interesting. Do you believe that the government has effectively become the drug dealer in cases like your son's?
Well, let's see. The doctor's dispensing the hydromorphine pills by legislation. Federal government legislated. So you've got the federal government, you've got the doctors involved, you've got the pharmacies, and then you've got the street drug dealers. So I would have to say that at a higher level, yes, our Liberal government right now is acting like a drug lord, maybe. You know, here's your hydromorphine, the doctor gives it here, here's my son, and there's the street dealers. It's a chain, so yes.
It is terribly concerning. One of the things you said in your opening statement, you talked about how your son goes to this recovery clinic. You have to take him every single week, but all he gets is a script. He doesn't actually, and he does a drug test. He doesn't actually get any counseling. I went onto the recovery care website, and they talk about mental health. They seem to talk about the fact that this exists, but you're saying that in the 2 years your son has been part of this program, he hasn't received mental health support. Is that correct?
No, the only thing when I have faxed in letters to Dr. Bro, or the few times my son allowed me to go in to talk to him, my son comes home with a sheaf of photocopied anything anybody could access, you know, Narcotics Anonymous, mental health crisis line, suicide line. It's almost an affront to me as a taxpayer and a mother of an addict, because I know they're getting this funding. Are you telling me that with your $10 million plus you can't have an extra counselor in your clinic on site? None of the things that they claim in their website, in my experience, over 3 years, have ever been realized with my
Has
son.
he actually received, to your knowledge, counseling from a counselor at Recovery Care Clinic?
No.
Has he ever received virtual counseling from a counselor associated with Recovery Care Clinic, to your knowledge?
I think once. The counselor's name is Jimmy. My daughter had the same one, even though she was at a different Recovery Care Clinic location. Jimmy was the counselor across all 4 clinics, and because this was COVID, initially with COVID, it was all virtual. So my son, when he did agree early on into the program, before the Safe Supply kicked in, early on into the program, he agreed to speak to, because as his parents, we were giving him ultimatums. If you don't get counseling, we're going to have to, we're trying to leverage, some sort of consequences. He spoke to Jimmy once. The second appointment, Jimmy dropped it, and the third appointment, my son dropped it, and that was it.
That's incredibly troubling. Thank you so much for sharing. My next question is to Dr. Davila, really quickly. You say that they are witnessed in the city of Toronto. Is that what you were pushing for, was all witnessed in? Is that why you moved towards trying to get Toronto to have decriminalization and a legalization of drugs like crack, to have more witnessed programs, or was this to just have a free-for-all?
So, through the chair, what we're trying to do is provide, evidence-informed advice around how to address a very, very challenging situation on the ground.
So, witnessed, yes or no?
So, we offer a clinic service that is witnessed, but I recognize that there are a range of different options that are required to meet the different needs of different people.
Thank you, Dr. Davila. Thank you, Ms. Goodridge. You gave me the list.
Okay. To our witnesses, thank you for being here today. To Mrs. Krupp, our family does have lived experience. My brother lives on the street and has been on the street for years, struggling with his addiction. I lost my brother-in-law to an overdose, also an uncle as well. So I really, truly appreciate your testimony today. Dr. Davila, is it your position today the same as in 2018 when your office released a report in which you recommended the legalization of highly addictive and deadly drugs such as heroin, meth, and cocaine and fentanyl? Do you believe that that is still your position today?
So through the chair, my position is that we need to take an evidence-informed approach to substance use,
okay,
and that the current criminalization of those who use drugs is actually not serving our shared objective of a better, healthier society.
So you agree that we should be legalizing heroin, meth, cocaine, and fentanyl?
I think we should be treating substance use as a health issue, and we need to modernize our existing policy approach to substance use.
Okay, now you're a public health physician, is that correct? You're not actively involved in these centers. You're a public health physician that drafts policy, is that correct?
So I do not provide direct clinical treatment.
Okay, thank you. Dr. ParlVu, I appreciate your testimony today. You called decriminalization in BC a success. Were you aware that the leading cause of death for children aged 10 to 18 is overdose?
Yes, I am. But
is that a success to you?
Do you want me to answer?
Well, yes, please.
Okay. I'm a scientist, and I know that causal attribution is really complex, and you cannot, because something is higher than before decrim, attribute this to decrim. There have been other factors at play.
Okay.
Inflation, housing problems.
I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
It was a success. Okay.
I appreciate your answer. 47,000 Canadians have lost their lives since 2016. I struggle to see how that is a success in Canada overall. I'll go to Mrs. Krupp again. Your comment regarding safe supply. We heard from the parents of Brianna McDonald a couple weeks ago. That was a 13-year-old that died by overdose alone and in a homeless encampment. Their powerful testimony include the following quote: "The words safe and drugs don't belong in the same sentence." Would you agree with that?
I would most definitely agree with that.
How old was your daughter when she died?
My daughter was 46.
How old is your son today?
He's 30.
Do you believe that the federal government has fooled people into believing opioids and other drugs are safe based on marketing of harm reduction programs?
I believe that there needs to be an education for sure. I mean, I had to educate myself on safe supply, methadone, like things like methadone has a half-life, the recommended doses when you're starting a program. In my daughter's case, the doctor started her off on 30. And yet the literature I reviewed across Canada and the States, including all the medical associations, recommend 10 to 20 dosage. He started her at 30, didn't do an opiate tolerance test. There's all kinds of things that parents need to be aware of. And in terms of Brianna, the tragedy there is beyond me. A 13-year-old, the fact that the parents couldn't get her the help that they desperately tried to. Their hands are tied by policies, by legislation, by the ignorance of the general. You have to be living it daily. Like, let me tell you how I spent my Sunday.
Just one sec. I just want to get this online. Have you witnessed safe supply being diverted into the hands of children?
Not children, adolescents.
Teens?
Teens, once, downtown.
Downtown.
They knocked on our car window. My son had just gotten in from his Friday visit, and the boy looked to be about 19. Tapped on the window. I said to my son, lower it, and he asked for hydromorphine, begged for 2 pills. He said, I'll give you $20. And, I said, I'm really sorry, you can go to the clinic, and we drove off. Okay. That's right, just blocks away from here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Group. Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Dr. Pawlowski, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Krupp, the term safe supply or safer supply, as the previous speaker said, conservatives didn't invent that term, but it is through the listening to those with lived experience like yourself that we're seeing the evidence of this approach being anything but safe. So when I hear your description of your son's experience and your experience, nothing about it sounds safe. Nothing about it sounds safer. You referred to his so-called safe supply as a currency, and about the now prevalence in high school, the diversion and the lack of traceability on this so-called safe or safer supply. So can you comment a bit on that? Because one of you, in your opening remarks, you mentioned that your son is still using crack cocaine, fentanyl, so is still using these hard drugs while diverting his safer supply. So what about this, in your opinion, is safe?
Well, I'm going to just point to my experience, lived experience with my son. I don't see anything safe about it. How could it be called safe supply when 3+ years later, he's still going to the clinic, he's still seeing the same doctor, all he's dropped is his methadone, and he's done that himself, when I think his methadone never should have been dropped, because the methadone has to be, according to what I've read, you can't drop the methadone until, if they're into fentanyl still. So all that to say, 3+ years later, he's getting his methadone, he's getting his Dilaudid. the Dilaudid is a means of currency for him to continue using crack cocaine. So it's not safe because he's still using unsafe street drugs. That right there, the whole purpose of the Safer Supply program was to divert addicts from using harmful street drugs. Well, that's not happening in my experience. Not only is he continuing to use harmful street drugs, the safe supply that he's being administered every day by a doctor is making its way where it should not be, which is in the skate parks. My son was a skateboarder. Skate parks, adolescents, and they have money to buy these pure hydromorphins. So I cannot call this safe. Otherwise, my son's results would be different. We're not talking about a month or 30 days. We're talking about 3.5 years. So there's your experiment of our lived experience of Safer Supply. Take it for, and it's certainly evidence-based. It's certainly fact-based.
Thank you. Professor ParlVu made the remark that nothing has changed in the last decade. In fact, there's been tremendous changes in law. I'm thinking specifically about the current Liberal government's Bill C-5, which now allows those that are importing, exporting, and producing, such as in a meth lab, Schedule I, the most serious drugs, to not serve any time in prison, but to have house arrest, which puts them back into the community. Your evidence about your son being able to obtain these drugs, what message do you think it sends to young people if there's no consequence for someone who's running a meth lab or importing cocaine into our country, and all the while, as you described it, the federal government is handing out this so-called safe supply?
Well, I wasn't aware of the finer points of C5, so thank you for that. I'm going to educate myself on that. There have been changes. In fact, methadone was I want to bring that because I know the doctor said methadone was highly regulated by Health Canada up until I think 2015 or 2016. So in terms of these, why all of a sudden can everybody dispense methadone at any clinic? Clinic, a doctor killed my daughter who wasn't trained to dispense methadone. That's a fact. In terms of house arrest, that's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. In other words, you can come and produce crack and whatever. You can be a liberal and a progressive country, but you cannot. Hard drug use is not normal. It shouldn't be encouraged to be normal. It should be treated, and it should be pointed to recovery. My son doesn't want to be a drug addict. He doesn't want to use methadone or crack or fentanyl. He wants to be normal. But he's an addict, and we have tried to get him the help. And yes, it is very nuanced, as the doctor has said. I think overall, first of all, if you're producing drugs and selling them on the street, you go to jail. That sends a message. Or maybe perhaps people have to start a vigilante thing, and we'll take care of the drug dealers as parents.
Well, unfortunately,
Thank you. Mr. Moore, thank you, Ms. Group.
time?
Yep,
Chair?
you're out of time. Next, Ms. Kayabaga, please. Dr. Ellis, please.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks everybody for being here. Just a couple of comments, if I might. First of all, Mr. ParlVu talked about depoliticizing this situation. I would draw everybody's attention to a social media post in May talking that, as it says here, hey everyone, at Pierre Poilievre is a hashtag public danger. He is way more toxic for society than all drugs. That doesn't sound like depoliticizing this incredibly important debate to me. That being said, Mrs. Krupp, thank you very much for your testimony. I had a chance to read it, and I really appreciate you being here, and apologize for not being able to be here right away. We talked a little bit about methadone and, of course, the tragedy that happened in your family related to methadone. and I once was a family physician and had a license to prescribe methadone, and at that time it was necessary to prove the competence as a prescriber before you were allowed to prescribe methadone. In my reading, those regulations changed in 2017. And in your mind, if that regulation continued to exist, would that have changed the outcome in your family if you had a competent prescriber?
If those regulations were in place, I believe most certainly my daughter would have been alive, because the physicians that were dispensing prior to 2017 had to be trained. Now they are not. For example, Recovery Care has 4 clinics across Ottawa. Guess how many doctors have the certificate for addictions? 1, Dr. Charles Burrow. All the other doctors at all the other locations, including the one that my daughter went to, none of them have addictions training.
Those comments, of course, are very, very concerning, and I think it's something that this committee needs to take into consideration as we draft recommendations around how things need to change in the future. And Dr. Davila, I find it interesting. I had a chance to read some of the comments that you've made. Am I right on behalf of Canadians in saying that when you talk about legalization and some of the proposals you put forward, that you didn't believe there would even be an age limit on use of unregulated drugs in this country? Is that true?
So let's be clear. What I have put forward and what we put forward at Toronto Public Health is in respect of decriminalization and a nuanced discussion on how to create drug policy that actually better supports health.
Yeah,
that
I guess
has to be a
that
part.
wasn't my question. My question was very specific. Does your policy include the fact that there be no age limit?
So our decriminalization application did include young people who we recognize are actually also very much suffering from addiction.
I'm going to interrupt you, but you're giving us a word salad. On behalf of Canadians, your legalization program did not have any age limit whatsoever.
Through the chair, it was a decriminalization application to the federal government, and yes, it considered young people who are also suffering with challenges of substance use in order to
Dr.
protect
Davila,
their
I am
health.
going to interrupt you there because you continue to say your same line over and over again, and I understand why you're doing that. I assume it's because you're embarrassed to come out and say what the actual truth is, that on behalf of Canadians out there, of course, those of us on this side of the House do realize that young people suffer with opioid use disorder. Of course we do. But in the policies that we've read that you've put forward, you're talking about legalization, which you want to argue and call by a different name, but also not admit the fact that it includes no age limit for young people.
So through the chair, it was an application to the federal government for decriminalization. Yes, it considered young people because they are actually suffering and stigmatized related to their drug use. And as well, you'll note that our strategy at the City of Toronto does consider a very broad range of approaches. We recognize that it is not a simple solution that will actually get us where we, I believe, want to get to, which is a healthier, thriving community.
Yeah,
we actually need better drug policy, we need more prevention, we need more harm reduction, and we need more treatment.
Excuse me, ma'am, but these are my
your last
questions.
question, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Chair. What we're seeing here is the fact of the matter that neither of Mrs. Krupp's children were born wanting to be addicted to drugs. Everybody over here realizes that. But I think, Dr. Davila, what you're failing to realize, and of course why your proposal was actually shot down by the province, is the fact that nobody in this country now believes that legalization of drugs and giving out drugs for free especially to kids, is in any way, shape, or form going to change the narrative of the chaos and drugs and disruption that policies such as yours are allowing to happen on the streets. And I guess, the fact of the matter is...
Dr. Ellis, that's your time if you want to.
If I may just finish up.
Yeah.
If I hope you're happy
okay, we have a point of order from Ms.
that now
Briere.
exist.
Point of order?
Point of order, go ahead.
We are not talking about legalization. We
Yeah,
are talking about
Yeah,
decriminalization.
Thank you, Ms. Briere. Okay, Dr. Ellis, are you finished?
Sorry.
I don't think there's
Your
anything
time
else
is
to
up.
say, but thank you, Chair. I appreciate you.
Okay.
I'm not finished, but yes, my time is up. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair. I appreciate you.
Okay,